Forgive me, I'm having a technical problem, and various people.
I've asked me if I can send them the link again. I've asked me if I can send them the link again.
Just be another minute. We have a good number of viewers who are okay. Okay, so we'll continue. Not sure what happened before, but we're up to the Chashem Hatzdaka, which is Kinot 19. The Chashem Hatzdaka, I mention each year, is built out of the words of Daniel, who lived, Daniel Ish Hamudot, who grew up as a child in Bavel. He was taken captive there before the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash itself. But at the time, one of the Galuyot, one of the exiles that happened prior to CE. So it describes in the Gemara Masechet Megillah and Daf Yud Bet that Daniel, like many others before and after him, tried, we saw earlier today, to keep account of how many years it would be before the redemption, before the Beit HaMikdash would be rebuilt. And so it was that he had a count, but he made a mistake. And he was crestfallen to discover that his count was mistaken and erroneous. And he couldn't understand why the redemption didn't happen. He also made a mistake. As it says in the book of Daniel, I, Daniel, in the first year of the reign, meaning of Daryavish ben Achashverosh, Mizera Madai, I was trying to figure things out. And I was trying to figure things out. The pasuk says that based on what it says in Yirmiyahu, it would be 70 years. So we see the fact that he was looking into it, the Gemara says, must mean he made a mistake. When he realized he had made a mistake, all he had left was tefillah. I'm sure he davened many times before, but he got up to daven. And it describes in Sefer Daniel, Vayitnai Panai El Hashem Elokim, Levakesh Tefillah Tachnim B'tzum B'sak Ve'efer. He mourned over Yerushalayim and the fact that he thought his tefillah to that point were unrequited. And so he started to call out to Hashem. And in that tefillah, that's where he says to Hashem, Chashem Hatzdaka V'lanu B'lo Shrapanim. And the entirety of this Kinot is actually going through all of the different lines about contrasting the kindness, the justice, and righteousness of Hashem versus the shamefacedness, as it were, of Klal Yisrael. And that's going to lead in then to the next kina after this, which we'll get to soon, which is kina number 20, Hatei Elokai Oznecha. So let's say together, page 240 in the Art Scroll, it's kina Yud Tet. Chadunoi Hatzdaka, Ododa Zerhi Flaita Meazvad Ata, Bosh Tapani, Vichin Asher Nitzrafnu, Otanuti, Chadunoi Hatzdaka, Begoini Kerev Goy Lekachat, Onug Mazeh Mazod, Chadunoi Hatzdaka, Behaut Elohim, Vidot Olam, Onu Bosh Rapon, Yam Yam Suf Goy, Behaut Shasham, Chadunoi Hatzdaka, Bezeher, Vatan Eidai, Vani Elohim, Onu Bosh Tapanim, Becharefeinu, Adonai Besim, Whom Asilon Elohim Chadonai Tzedakah B'Tam Sheet Amin Avnu Fano So Shemen V'Dvash Chadonai Tzedakah B'Chuku Manu V'Eram V'Danan V'Lana Bosh Chapanim V'Lechem HaKotel Avoteinu B'Holeihim V'Ragno Chadonai Tzedakah V'Nivar V'Chazan V'Davar V'Bosh Chapanim V'Yihatzor V'Van V'Chatzet V'Zahav V'Davar Chadonai Tzedakah B'Sichon V'Or V'Chomam V'Chotkinan But about the Panim, the Afan, Shema, the favor, and believe it so on. The Chadonai Tzedakah before, the Shepha'al to the Arba, Asam, Musim, the Bosh the Panim, Itzel, Micha, Kivanach, Musim, Chadonai Tzedakah, the Kimat Shilo, the Lord, the Kifor, and the Lamin, the Bosh the Panim, the Shnim Tzavonu, Shecharbu, Hamanitonu, the Chadonai Tzedakah, the Shnei, Chadonai Shecharbu, the Yitzenu, Nafin Payamni, the Bosh the Panim, Shuvein, Oila, Polei, Shuvein, Brachamim. Chayzdot v'tsham me'od she'na shahaytas in the Kedusha and the Shema. V'shkapanim kitavo ish chamudor atei Elohai. Page 244, Atei Elohai Oznecha, is in fact beginning from words taken from Sefer Daniel from the 9th parak. Today is a day to remember the depredations of our enemies, the horrific things that they speak against us. And we're asking Hashem to listen to the tiflatzit and etzet, to listen to them blaspheming and saying, Mili v'shamayim, who should I even have any fear of in heaven? Who is in heaven anyway? And listen to the enemies. Sha'agat sorerecha, omen aru aru ari yesod sha'ar shamayim. Hear the roar of your tormentors, the ones who are themselves wicked, and what they say to you and about you. About the raising of the foundations of even the gates of heaven, meaning of Sha'ar Shamayim. And that's the refrain, Atei Elohai Oznecha. Just in time for Tisha B'Av. On August 6th, the story was carried about this scurrilous, prestigious Belgian daily that carried an op-ed that was written by Dimitri Verhulst, published July 27 in Der Morgen, which describes Jews in Israel as land thieves with a religious superiority complex and says, quote unquote, they have ugly noses. The editor of the paper on August 6th came forward to defend his writer when he said, Bark Eichhut, the editor-in-chief of Der Morgen, said, quote, we clearly do not view the text as anti-Semitic, otherwise we wouldn't have published it. Neither did the author intend it as anti-Semitic. The op-ed surely is a harsh criticism on Israel's politics toward the Palestinian people. It is written in a hard, sarcastic fashion, and it foretells the current uproar, stating that any hard criticism on Israel will always be reinterpreted as anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a very serious allegation, which we think is used too easily in this case, in a way to silence the debate about Israel's policies. The title of this piece was, quote, there is no promised land, only stolen land. And the op-ed charges, through sarcasm, that Israelis and their supporters regard themselves as chosen and as God's darlings, and they use the ambiguous biblical concept of jihad, and they have their privileges. Palestinians were driven out of their homes in 48 to make place for God's favorites. Verhulst wrote, speaking with the chosen, he accuses Israel of quote-unquote murdering 10,000 Palestinians since 2002. That period includes 3 armed conflicts between Israel and Hamas in Gaza and the Second Intifada. The Forum of Jewish Organizations, Belgium's Flemish region, complained to the police about the alleged incitements incitement in the Verhulst column, said the article does not really criticize Israel, but insults Jews as a people. The Central Jewish Board of the Netherlands also condemned the op-ed as anti-Semitic, etc., etc. And if you didn't have the date, you really think that this could have been written sometime in the 1930s. There's another journalist, Dutch journalist, who handles media issues for the Forum of Jewish Organizations, Hans Noops. He said for the first time since the 1940s, pure anti-Semitism is displayed and kept in the op-ed section of a mainstream Belgian daily. This summer, a line has been crossed. The controversy on Monday spilled over into the Netherlands when local Jews asked NRC Handelsblad, a Dutch left-leaning daily, to drop an in-depth interview with Verhulst, an award-winning author in the Dutch language, or at least address the controversy in the 3,500-word interview. NRC Handelsblad refused, and a deputy editor telling critics that it does not intend to punish Verhulst. Like Noop, Dutch Chief Rabbi Benjamin Jacobs also found echoes of the rampant anti-Semitism that characterized mainstream media in the region during the 40s and the previous decades. The anti-Semitic article in Der Morgen reminds me of yesterday, the 1930s, and unfortunately it also reminds of today. Jacobs is the son of Holocaust survivors. He wrote in an op-ed, "I am worried. I don't know if that will be understood." Verhulst himself declined Jewish Telegraphic Agency's request for a comment. Beginning of this month, of August, Iran decided in a special meeting with the leaders of Hamas, to fund now the Hamas to $30 million per month in order to get intel on Israel. Islamic Republic of Iran is under tremendous sanctions around the world. But what are they going to spend $30 million on? They want to know where Israel keeps its missiles and how their troops function. So was reported by Western media. Hamas officials, notwithstanding the fact that they lack food or medicine, they evidently have plenty of money for terror, said Dani Ganon, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. Israel is determined to act against all branches of Iran's terror operations. During his visit to Tehran, the Hamas leader al-Aruri said that Hamas and Iran stand on the same path in fighting Israel. We are on the same path as the Islamic Republic, the path of battling the Zionist entity and the arrogant ones. Hashem, listen to what they say. And listen also to what they do. Just now, a couple of days ago, came the report in the Jerusalem Post that the Sparrow terrorists in the bombing in 2001 have received $910,823 in a pay-for-slay funds in the last 18 years. On August 9th, 18 years ago, female terrorist Ahlam Tamimi smuggled a bomb in a guitar case into Jerusalem and led a suicide bomb to the crowded Sparrow pizza shop in Jerusalem city center. Suicide terrorist Adin al-Masri ate a slice of pizza and blew himself up, murdering 15 people, 7 of them children, and wounding close to 130 others. Tamimi was interviewed on TV recently, rebroadcast on Palestinian Authority TV. "I have no regrets. No Palestinian person regrets what she or she has done. 2 Americans were among the dead, Malki Roth and Shoshana Yehuda Greenbaum. The PA has paid the 7 terrorists to help orchestrate the attack, as well as the bomber's family, al-Masri's family, $910,823. This report was released last Thursday by Palestinian Media Watch. They include monthly salaries paid to terrorists in prison, payments to the family of the dead terrorist, payments to the terrorists like Tamimi, who were released in 2011 Gilad Shalit prisoner exchange deal, brokered in the Israeli government and Hamas. The PA pays $7,321 a month to the Sparrow terrorists and their families. The al-Masri family alone has received $53,689. While Tamimi is on America's most wanted terrorist list, the U.S. has been unable to extradite her from Jordan, where she presently lives. In 2017, the country's top court refused to hand her over to the U.S. because of a 1995 extradition agreement between the 2 countries, but never ratified by the Jordanian government. Why are we defined as terrorists, she asked. Why is Alam defined as a terrorist? Etc., etc. And here's the idea. This is the disgusting way that our enemies talk and continue to talk. Atei Elohai Aznacha, hear all of this. Hear the crying blood of Sarah Halimi, Shem Yikom Dama, who was murdered in the most brazen and horrific manner, a woman in her own apartment, by a man named Traore, who was found just now in July. The Paris court decided that he is anti-Semitic and he is unfit for criminal trial. Kobili Traore was a neighbor of Sarah Halimi in a Paris public housing project. Sarah Halimi, a 65-year-old former teacher, was severely beaten by him and then thrown from a third-floor window on April 4, 2017. During the ordeal, Traore, a Muslim of Malayan origin who had been attending a local mosque frequented by Islamists, was heard screaming Allahu Akbar and calling her Satan out loud as he beat his victim. A few weeks before, he had insulted Halimi's visiting daughter as a dirty Jewess, and their paths crossed in the building's elevator. A spokesman for the official representative body of French Jews told the Allgemeiner on Tuesday that the community's fight to secure justice for Halimi was not over despite the decision. And they explain how they're going to continue to go after this individual. By the by, why was he unfit for trial? The defense team consistently argued that their client's judgment on the night he murdered Halimi, and therefore his criminal responsibility, had been nullified by his consumption of marijuana. 2 of the 3 independent psychiatric reports commissioned by the investigating judge concurred with this assessment. At the same time, Traore is not known to suffer from schizophrenia or similar mental health issues that can be aggravated by marijuana use. If the appeal court finds Traore is unfit to stand trial, the remaining options include sending him back to a drug treatment program or even releasing him back into the community outright. We recite together Atei Elokai Oznecha and beg the Almighty to hear the depredations of horrific enemies. Atei Elokai Oznecha. Let's say. Shmatzat Hatzuriyachot. So Shemaim Atei Elokai Oznecha. Bikshela Duter Al Tzadik Atra Ushma Kol She'on Nebi Chema Shafu Cholushatei Atei Elokai Oznecha. Tzir Shuma Hanam Kumu V'Nachuma Arel V'Chama Ushma Vatsu Homi Ra Ha'ei V'Tov V'Tov V'Gilachama Atei Elohai Oznecha V'Atsu Eitzo V'Chashavu V'Netzim Abami Hadu Ushma Sichat No Atsu Lev Yavdav Alecha Alov Mistak Halu Atei Elohai Oznecha V'Ni Atsu V'Shilcha V'Eish Vikramora Ushma V'Parafecha Magninei Tov V'Dah V'Pulzimna Atei Elohai Oznecha V'Leitzim Watsu V'Kamdu V'Men Shmagol Cher Patana Sher Kefucha Tele Matcha Aleim Atei Elohai Oznecha Hotzi Cheruvim Nirechova V'Chazvim Ushma Tarakova Hela Midot Elohai Oznecha Chilu Info Beit Kodesh Kodesh Ushma Zaydin Zarkim Mulach Milot Kidoshim Atei Elohai Oznecha V'Lo'azim Izim Hatzah V'Chulacham Atutu V'Veit Ushma Hello, Holim, Halim, Ki Eis Beveito Hatei Elohai Oznecha V'Teret Ani V'Atzilod Ushma V'Fer Chilfer Mishtach Etzer Akisach HaOr Atei Elohai Oznecha V'Vozem Al Eged Matochil V'Ein Anivze Ushma B'Chiyat Maspid V'Korin Chakim Atay B'Nei Atei Elohai Oznecha Olim Izav Sukach V'Mutash V'Ra Ad Shemein Ushma V'Katem V'Fanei Kinatenu Er Panech Amitashcha Hashem. Continue with Arze Halavanon. Arze Halavanon, page 248, which is what we read also on the period of time of Yom Kippurim. They remember great Torah scholars, great Torah sages who have passed from this earth, so often, unfortunately, sadly, murdered at the hands of horrific enemies. Hillel Seidman, a survivor of the Shoah, in October of 1942, that is to say after the Great Deportation, 265,000 Jews from Warsaw to Treblinka, was an eyewitness to seeing great Chachamim, great sages. I was actually thinking about this piece when we visited on our heritage mission. We went to Lublin, we went to Yeshivat Chachmei Lublin, and we saw there the reconstituted Beis Medrash. No people, of course, but us. But the building is there. And Hill Simon wrote the following description inside the Warsaw Ghetto. There was a man there named Schultz who employed an overseer, who had a factory. And in this factory, there's people who are working. Hill Simon describes the following. There was an overseer named Avram Hendel. He used his position to provide the religious and communal leaders with work permits. And I'm reading this from Henry Abramson's book, Torah from the Years of Wrath. He writes the following, October 1942. Now I'm in Schultz's factory. I've come at the time when people are both hammering in nails and reciting Hoshanot prayers. Here are gathered, thanks to one of the directors, Mr. Avram Hendel, the elite of the Orthodox community. Hasidic masters, rabbis, scholars, religious community organizers, well-known Hasidim. Sitting beside the anvil for shoe repairing is the Kozlover Rebbe, Rav Yehuda Aryeh Fromer, once the dean of Yeshivat Chochmei Lublin. He was the last dean of Yeshivat Chochmei Lublin. He is sitting here, but his spirit is sailing in other worlds. He continues his studies from memory without interruption, his lips moving constantly. From time to time, he addresses a word to the Admor of Piasetzna, or the Colonimus Kalman Shapira, the author of the Chovat HaTalmidim, who is sitting opposite him, and a subdued discussion on a Torah topic ensues. Talmudic and rabbinic quotations fly back and forth. Soon they appear on the anvil, or to be precise, on the minds and lips of those brilliant scholars, the words of Maimonides and the Ravid, the Rambam and the Ravid, the author of the Tur, the Balaturim, the Ramah, the earlier and the later authorities. The atmosphere of the factory is filled with the opinions of eminent scholars. So who cares about the SS, the German overseers, the hunger, suffering, persecution, and fear of death? They are really sailing now in the upper worlds. They're not sitting in a factory on Novolipi 46, but rather in the hall of the Sanhedrin in the Lishkat HaGazit. After the war, Hendel moved to Eretz Yisrael, and he published his memoirs, which is a first-hand account of the spiritual heroism of these religious figures. And Hendel specifically credits his own survival to a bracha that he got from the Piasetzna Rebbe, who worked in the shop until 1943. Say together on page 248, the tefillah, the Kinot rather, Arzei Halavano. Arzei Halavano Nadirei HaTorah, Ali Tracy, Lishma V'Gemara, Gibor Yikot, Malav Torah, Salam Yishpach, Nashta Gevura, Tigidosh V'Gemalchut, HaSara, Ilan Yochia, Zot Zachri Yazak Marat, Chambad Yisrael, Kli HaKodesh, Nezer VaTorah, Hori Leiv Kedoshim, Eitu, Le'emita Chamuro, Yadu, Reisha, Perbrura, Gora, Shal Shimon, Kusat, Gora, Soon Chazara Hegmon, the Horag Benefesh, and Surah, Mizer Ar, and Sa'a, Shavi Kora, Ben Agavira. Natarosh on Torah, or Gota, Noratora, Samena, Valina, Piva, Avura, Honor Amar, Kamit Gaber, Torah, Piton, Niknesala, Mita, Meshuna, Hamura, Sivo Hashir, Rosh, Taz, Kira, Kiandoro, Nafshe, Sikhi, Navur, Rasha, Posik, Kian, Komtfil, Mitzvah, Torah, Tzak, Akar, is the Anza Olam, the Eretz, Torah. Achara Reviu Rabbi Akiva Oker Harim Tochanan Zubizil Bisvara Sarah Sarah Masrik Shabaz Behi Stabira Yatz Nishmat Be'echad Vat Kol Amra Shech Akiva Gufach Ta'or B'chomine Ta'ola Ben Bava Rabbi Yehuda Achra Reviu B'Sifim Leil Azara B'Sifim Shana B'Dei Arura Yoshe B'Tanya Ok Chosid B'Lat Tamara Chibin Tradion Achara Makit Yehilot B'Tzion Shara Asher B'Dorei is Sefer Torah, B'Kifu B'Chavlis Mora, Tapur B'Tzitu Pohem B'Chaveru Sefer Torah. Tzvut Mishot Semer Hinuchu Al Bibo Shlu Yamut Meira Chasi Rabbi Sheba B'Sofer Haragu Amamura Zrakuhu B'Shlachuhu K'Avihu K'Avura. That's the Bat Kol Alav Shlu Hiniach K'Lu Mitorat Moshe Yishamira Nachalav B'Chutz B'Yom Evra. Oh, Fapureya, Nizav, the Havel Piv, Kivamadura, Sadiq Rabbi Eliezer ben Shamuha, Bechorin Arad, Yom Erev Shabbat Zman Kiddush v'Yikadesh v'Yikra, Chirb Sh'ol Refu, Havu Inichu, Chaim v'Gamra, Yatz Nishmat v'Vara Elohim, Yotze Yitzhar Tzura, Heina v'Chaheina Sifu b'nei Avu v'Anod v'Ge'ara, Skila Seif v'Her v'Chenet Michalas Shara, Teret Mimena Yochlu Arayot Zepzura, Chazei HaTufa v'Shok HaTruma, Tarafu Aryeh v'Hakefira, Tiv Adonai v'Sifot v'Sil Esra, Ametz Birkayim Koshelot, Chelik Yaakov Moshiach B'Eit Tzara, Tzedek Yimoch Me'elech, Marshamu Yimei Etleich, Le'oro Nisa. Somewhere in the midst of these Kinot, we've transitioned from the Churban of places, particularly the Bate Mikdash, and from the time period of Beit Sheni, and now we're really into the Kinot that have to do with the Middle Ages, and martyrs throughout the Middle Ages and Jewish communities in the Middle Ages. Page 254, HaCharishim, and also the loss of Torah. If you look on page 258, it's the middle of Kinot 22. In my volume, it's 258. It calls out Torah, Torah chisak, v'itpalshi b'afarim. Torah, Torah, put on sackcloth and roll around in the ashes. And the idea that the Torah itself grieves, and Torah itself is aggrieved over the loss of Torah sages, over so much Torah that's destroyed. And each year, because there are so many tragedies, there's always so many things I've never talked about before. We've talked a lot about the First Crusade over time. But you know, there were massacres that transpired as part of the Crusades. The Third Crusade, there were massacres in London and in York in 1189 and 1190. This occurred at York on the night of March 16th. It was a Friday night, the Shabbos of Shabbat HaGadol. The Crusaders are about to leave on the Third Crusade. And in fact, the Jews were aware that something was in the offing. And so one of the Rebbeim who was there, Rabbi Yom Tov Miyoni. Rabbi Yom Tov Miyoni was one of the Baalei Tosfot in England. He's mentioned in Tosfot 5 times. The Tosfot that we have printed on the page, you call him Harav Rabbeinu Yom Tov. And the assumption is that it's him. It's found in various places in Shas. You can look those up. It's Gemara Pesachim, Kuf Tet Zayin, Gemara Yuma Memchet, Gemara Yivamet Memdalet, a few other places also there in Zayin, Menachot, Bechet. He's mentioned. He was a Talmud of Rabbeinu Tam. He was born in France, and he learned in the yeshiva of Rabbeinu Tam. And then he became the Rosh Yeshiva, basically, of all Talmidei Rabbeinu Tam, who moved to England. And there he was made basically the head of the communities of York and surrounding environs. He was therefore the one who went to the warden of Wark Castle and asked them to receive them with their wives and their children. And in fact, they were accepted into the tower called Clifford's Tower. It was also known as a keep. And basically it was a place where they could be safe during the time of this impending massacre that they knew was in the offing. They were in the royal castle there. And the chronicler of this event, William of Newburgh, described the rioters of York as acting, quote unquote, without any scruple of Christian conscientiousness, end quote, wiping out the Jewish community. There are others who wrote about this as well, these lamentable acts, the anti-Semitic fervor that seized everyone. There were various ways in which Jews were discriminated against. Rioting had gone throughout England, and prominent Jews such as Benedict of York were denied entry to King Richard I's coronation banquet in 1189. Benedict was the wealthiest Jew of York, and he was mortally wounded in rioting that transpired at Westminster a little time thereafter. When the Jews were there in Clifford's Tower, which apparently you can still go to today, in the 20th century, they uncovered the blackened remains of the fire in the excavations at Clifford's Tower. So goes the story. They were trapped there in the castle. The tower was besieged by a mob of crusaders and demanded that Jews convert to Christianity or be baptized. Rabbi Yom Tov Halevi of Yoani, the student of Rabbeinu Tam, told him something very, very hard for our ears to really understand. He basically gave them a heter, if not an instruction, that no Jew should be taken alive. Because if they will be taken alive, they will be taken to be baptized forcibly, and everyone will lose their olam haba, essentially. And he gave a speech. He said, "Elokei Avotenu, miyomer lo matase," the God of our forefathers, who will tell him what to do? V'u'metzave aleinu hayom lamut al Toratenu, he commands us today to die for our Torah. V'namavet omei b'petach, death stands at the door. Muftachani ki einchem choshim chas v'shalom la'azov et Torah hakdosha b'svil sha'kal sh'chayim. I am sure that you will not think, even chas v'shalom, to abandon the Torah, holy Torah, even for one moment of life. Livchor lachem gorel yoter kasher la'anshe kavod min hamavet. And you won't choose for yourselves any harsher fate for yourselves, who are people of honor, than death. Lichiot kebogdin, better to die honorably than to live as traitors. Tluim berachmei oivim hazedin v'netunim liklimat olam, who will be placed by the mercy of your enemies, the wanton ones, and in fact will be sent to everlasting shame, meaning not only in this world, but in the next world as well. Now that the Almighty, the Creator, is calling for us to return our lives which He has given us, let us return our lives to God with our own hands. Many from our nation knew how to do this in other times of decree. And when he finished speaking, many Jews there agreed to take their own lives, or to allow their own friends to take their lives. According to testimonies, secondary testimonies, Rabbi Yom Tov himself killed 60 people. Other Jews were chose to just be burned by Al-Kiddush Hashem. Approximately 150 Jews were killed in that place. It's lo yuman. It's impossible for us to even understand how these things are possible. My teacher, Dr. Chaim Soloveitchik, wrote a number of essays about this complexity and about what this means, is so-called Kiddush Hashem, but no one's ever wrapped their heads around how this kind of an order could have been given and what state of affairs was transpiring, that people thought that this would be okay. I remind you again, though, they thought, if at least we'll leave the world now like this, at least we won't have to die as Christians. And if we have to die as Christians, we lose our chelik and olam haba as people who have converted out of the faith. It's very hard to understand. Page 254, memorial of many of the Crusades. This is just one among those Kinot. Lusamayim zaki adama ari lusichi vahima goni arimo elim su tzaku mara sifu amur he agidu amura hoka hoa targam akira iduru amada zefzura izra zera horyabuzam ezra Nivado, Christu Tor, the Gare, Shame of God, his good as well, because you're the Hora, you're all about the Zara. Luchas together with the Rabban, it's your Tifara, Azul the Buri, because Shadra, Elaine Hodi Brew, Amir was a Hill, Yelchem Torah. נקריבכם כאור והקטרה ונזכי מחל אור הצפון מאין כל בעלומה הרי בשיחי והימה וכל נהי הרימה אז הסכימו גדולים קטנים קל בעבדים שוכן עונים זכני בשם ועננים הם היו תחיל גדולים יעץ לקראתם אז איפן ונהגו המון המונים התערבו גדולים פרשדונים ואור אשר היו רחמנים נבחו אכזר כי אין Fisu Abu Valbanim, Go Segura, Allah Lison. You saw the Halaf Sekir, Bakrim Ali Tola, Munin, and Mahla Farkitanin, Hakalo, Yusuf Sanim, Ulafo, Khatanin. The Khataho, the Khair, the Khidri, Sikhuzot, the Haladan Munin, Takhsun Habakin, Hospidu, Al Khasidi, Bahaguni, Mashutsu, Mahimazidon, Zakhas, or Nashi, Humar, and the Sikhida Hini, Konhiarima. Torah, Torah, Chigrisa, Gidpalsi, Vafoni, Ifel Yachid, Hasilach, Speha, Tamurim, Atosim, Shutayich, Chayv, Chubayich, Iva, Bigro, State Point, Ray, Kavayos, Teresh, Zero, Yarok, Ray, Sadeh, Mama Kayev, Hadarika. Yuchom Chamteich V'Yashu Vasharim V'Chamat V'Nachim Hashem Mashkilim Korki Zohavim V'Luchot Shalom Nachu Yishayim V'Vafu Yisrael B'Shem V'Otrim V'Vat Nefesh V'Chalem V'Tzim V'Chim V'Los Eromim Yitain Sefarim Mokat Safim Yidahim Mareinayim Hashem Asad V'Chis Matay T'Bidin V'Kostim I'm sorry, Fashion, I'm moving Hamot, about the corner, the Yava, the city, him, I call he, just being mindful of the time, we have about half hour left before or thereabouts, before we'll finish up the davening. So just be mindful to make sure, I can't see how many people are still sitting here, make sure we have a minyan at the Yosei Kaddish at the end. Page 260 is Ve'et Navi, is the story of Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol, and the story of what transpired with his son and daughter. Incredibly sad story. We focused on it in previous years in depth. To see various parts of it, to understand it a little bit, what's transpiring here. His brother and sister who are paired up because two captors think they would make a good match. In the morning they realize that they're really brother and sister and they die. Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol was one of the Asar Rudei Malchut. He died, and then the same thing happened to later generations. Parents and children both killed by enemies. Just a few days ago, I spoke about on Shabbos, the murder of Dvir Sorek, Hashem Yikom Damo, 19 years old, student in the Hesder Yeshiva, Machanayim, just found in Migdal Oz, where so many of the daughters of our community have gone to learn Torah. It's part of Yeshivat Har Etzion, the Etzion Foundation, where I was zocher to learn Yeshiva and Yeshivat Har Etzion. And when you just realize that Dvir Sorek's grandfather, Rabbi Naftali Herling, Hashem Yikom Damo, was also murdered by terrorists, it just boggles the mind. But that's not all. Naftali Herling, there's a book about him. It's found online called Ish Yeminecha. I got it to my friend at Chavrusa, by Daniel Yaakov, who found this online on the Otzra Chochma repository of trove material. It's a book about Harav Shmuel Binyamin Herling, who was born on Chav Daled Adar Tafrei Tzadivav on the 18th of March, 1936. Where was he born? In Bukovina. My father's family is from Bukovina. He was born to his parents of Yeshua and Rachaleah. Herling. They were Vizhnitzer Hasidim. Describes how in 1941 they were sent from their town, Cholamoid Sukkis, 1941. Yistavu Yehudei Itzkan. Yitzaref Alachem Besochava. Yisham Gurshu Transnistria should be Ukraine. They were held in Transnistria. A whole long story we don't have time for now, but let's just say he suffered mightily from terrible, terrible things. Terrible things in the Shoah. He made Aliyah. He joined B'nai Akiva, he was part of B'nai Akiva there. And he learned in yeshivas. He learned in Merkaz Harav. He was among when they started a Gar'in Torani in Kibbutz Yavne. He was one of the first 12 Talmidim in the yeshiva in Yavne, which later would be called Keren B'Yavne. It was a Gar'in Torani started under the leadership of Rabbi Goldvicht, Zichrono Livracha. He was one of the first 12 Talmidim. Who was his wife? He married Bracha, who was the daughter of Reb Chaim Menachem and Leah Rivka Zilberberg from Ramat Gan. Why do I tell you her family's name? Because her father, Rabbi Chaim Menachem, was a Talmid of the Admor of Piasetzna. He was a Talmid of the Admor of the Eish Kodesh, Rabbi Klomas Kam Shapira, and this boy, who in Europe was known as Shmuel, when he came to Israel, he took his other name, Binyamin. And he took a lot of his Torah and a lot of his spirit from the Torah of the Rebbe, of the Admor of Piasetzna. He was for 19 years sitting in the Beis Medrash in Elon Moreh. They wanted him to be the Rosh Hashiva. He refused, said it wasn't for him to do. And he continued the learning and the teaching he had done in Kfar HaRo'eh. And he was there as a fixture of the yeshiva, giving shiurim as an aram in yeshiva for years. You remember that at the start of the second Intifada, as it's known, the terror war, just the time of Rosh Hashanah, going into Yom Kippur, I remember Kol Nidre 2000, where I was, actually spoke about it that year. When Rabbi Hillel Lierman, Hashem Yikam Damo, was murdered by a gang at Kever Yosef, just at Shechem, with sticks. They bludgeoned him to death. With a terrible shock. Rabbi Hillel Lieberman's father was a rabbi at Yeshiva University, Zvulun Lieberman. And this caused Rabbi Binyamin Herling to just be completely incensed. And he decided, together with a group of people, they're going to reaffirm now, in 2000, October 2000, Chol Hamoed Sukkos, they're going to take a tiyul to be able to go to the area to at least see Kever Yosef, which had been destroyed completely by the Arabs, who since subsequently rebuilt again. And he had an Uzi with him. By the way, he was at Sankhan, and he was considered a very strong person physically. But suddenly, while their group was going, there were snipers firing at them from all different sides. And the book describes that he had an Uzi submachine gun, but it's not good for long range. It's only close range combat. They were worried they were about to be ambushed, so he held his fire, and he was killed. Chol Hamoed Sukkos. Just like Chol Hamoed Sukkos, 1942, he was exiled. 1941, excuse me, Tafshin Bet. So too, October 41, Tafshin Bet. So too, on Chol Hamoed Sukkos, Tafshin Samach Aleph, he was killed. And Hoshana Rabbah, thousands of people gathered to the cemetery in Kedumim, in the Shomron, to bury him there in the cemetery of the Yishuv. Binyamin Herling, Harav Binyamin Herling's grandson, was killed this past week in Eretz Yisrael in Hari Yehuda, just outside of Migdal Oz. We'll recite together. I mentioned Shabbos. I'll just remind you, I have here the article from Segula magazine. The father of the Niftar, Yoav Sorek, And he wrote this article called "To the Mountain of the Lord." He's part of the Tikva Fund. They have a magazine called Segula Magazine. It's about Jewish history. And he wrote an article, "How would Jerusalem's already congested traffic cope with millions converging on the Temple Mount?" And he describes a ring road would form an extended ellipse around Yerushalayim, defining the city's area of influence. They would describe the zone and how it would work, and there'd be parking garages, bridges, and tunnels constructed along the route of the road, allowing traffic to converge towards the Temple Mount while flowing rapidly and smoothly. The ring road will also regulate traffic flowing into the capital by electronically diverting vehicles to the least busy entrance. All access to the old city and the Temple Mount will be through public transport. And then he goes on to describe there'll also be a footpath people want to run through. Okay. Yoav Sarek. Continue now on page 260, that Avi Chatati, Shmima. Parents and children, grandparents and grandchildren. Abach killed. והסכימו זאת שניהם יחד, לערב זיגרו מחדר אחד, ועוד בחוץ לבנקך, ברוכים מהנפש של פחד, בוקר, בחיית ימימה זה יספוד בחיון, כי אלי וימסה, מן ארון איך לשפחה וימסה, גם היא תיאבד תיגשס, רק אחד, איך לעבד תנסה, אוי כי זאת כזה ארון לבוסר, לזאת מקואש וחסיר וחימה, חיום ימימה אור, בוקר זה את זה, כי והוא יחיד, והוא יכול תביאו, ונתדבקו יחד ונתחבו עד ירצת לשמת של הדגים הגדולים. אז זאת יקון ימייה בשעיה, גזיר זאת תמיד הנבחיה, ודואר ועברי יקד וכל חגי וחביה, בין ובעד מספר לאב אדימה, אי בסליחי לכל והימה וכל יחייה. We're going to skip the Kinot on page 270 and go to the one on page 278. We're skipping the Kinot on page 270 because it too is about the Crusades. It's about the Crusades of Speyer, Worms, and Magenza that transpired in the year 1096. I'm skipping it not only because of time constraints, but also because we discussed it already a little bit in Harishim Imeni, and also something else. And here I want to describe to you really briefly what happened when we went to Treblinka. And you go to Treblinka today, I mentioned there's nothing there, but there is a monument. It's not one monument. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of monuments. And every monument has on it, inscribed on the stones, it's little stones, big stones, the stones have written on them the names of the Jewish communities in the Shoah. If we say every Shabbos a tefillah called Av HaRachamim. Av HaRachamim is in the Shabbos davening. And it's about those three communities, Speyer, Worms, and Magenza. People ask, well, why do you have to do that every Shabbos? It destroyed the bastions of Torah. Torah was hanging by a thread after that first crusade transpired, after the terrible happenings there. And every Shabbos practically, except on festive occasions, we go again and again to go back again and review the destruction of these three communities. So you'll ask, why those three and not some other communities? The answer, I think, the best answer to come up with for Ashkenazi communities at least is, that's the beginning of the destruction of Ashkenaz. And if you want to make an Av HaRachamim for every community, you wouldn't get out of shul till they're already Sunday afternoon, every Shabbos. So we took just like the first one. It's the same reason, by the by, why Yukum Purkan is in Aramaic and refers to the Chachamim of Bavel. Some people cringe, but what Chachamim are there left in Bavel? The answer is there are a lot of Chachamim in Bavel. They're just not there geographically. They exist in our lives every day. They're in the Talmud Bavli. So Speyer Worms and Magensa, the helm of Ashkenazi Jewry, the world of Ashkenaz, was destroyed, laid waste in the spring of 1096. So that's like the first expression of total destruction in Ashkenaz. There were many others. Even for the Crusades, there were many others. I only gave you a few. Today we talked about just two of them. So we won't say Mitei Moshemayim now, but we're saying every Shabbos. That's exactly what we're saying. How could it intrude on our Shabbos? So you ask, how could it not intrude on our Shabbos? And this is always the debate back and forth. I say again and again, if you wanted to make a memorial day for every bad thing that happened for Klal Yisrael, there wouldn't be a so happy day left. There wouldn't be able to be weddings. There wouldn't be able to be simcha, nothing. Okay, so instead, Chazal wisely, they went over the limit because people said, well, we have to have a separate day. The debate, should it be Yom HaShoah, the day of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising? Should it be the day of Yom HaKadish Ali, Asar B'Tevet? Should it be Tisha B'Av? So for many of us, it's all three. It's just all three. On page 278, we opened the Kinot of Azbaloch Himel Kivrei Avot. And here is this story. A colleague of mine, Rabbi Akiva Males, came across letters written by a yeshiva bacher named Aaron David Scheinberg. My friend Rabbi Akiva Males is the rabbi of the Young Israel of Memphis, Tennessee. And this young boy, Aaron David Scheinberg, he found letters that he wrote from Eretz Yisrael a long time ago. And he translated into, well, he didn't translate, he's an American boy. So this boy is from Memphis, so he found the letters and he started to publish. He published the letters in Tradition magazine just now. He describes his visit to the Kotel in the early 20s. I've been inspecting the places of historical interest in Jerusalem. A visit to the Wailing Wall, the only remains of the ancient temple, was enough to break one's heart. There, close by the reeking odor of the narrow, dirty streets of the old Jerusalem, a Jew realizes that the glory of God has departed from Zion and that Yisrael is in the exile. And much more so, especially at this time. I suppose you have read in the press of the terrible incident which happened on Yom Kippur. This happened on Yom Kippur, 1928. The English soldiers roughly attempted to tear down the curtain separating the men worshippers from the women at the Wailing Wall. A riot ensued, which resulted in a woman being wounded. Ever since, the Jews of the entire Palestine have made sharp protests and held demonstrations. One was a mass meeting that brought more than 10,000 people and had been held in protest. So think of it. The holiest and most brazen, sacred spot of the Jewish people is controlled by the heartless and brazen Esav. For the few feet remaining of our holy temple, we must regard the English soldiers as the Balabatim. Oh, I tell you, it's heartrending. Here in Yerushalayim, now the feeling runs high. There are near riots almost every day. The Jewish population is putting up a sharp fight, and I think the result will be a happy one. At least we pray so. There is talk of buying the few feet of the temple wall or of demanding it from the government as Jewish property. This is in 1928. By the way, he writes that he secured a beautiful room with an old couple, refined people, and true Jewish aristocrats. And he's describing Rabbi and Mrs. Betzalel Samarik. They were acquaintances of his. By the way, this fellow Scheinberg had two friends, a friend Benjamin Hurwitz from Brooklyn and Harry Tzvi Froman from Chicago, Illinois. Two friends of his. They were all together, 1928. Why was this boy in Israel? You won't believe it. But he was studying for a Shana Ba'aretz in Eretz Yisrael Yeshiva. One of the most famous yeshivas of all of Europe had made a decision to relocate. The yeshiva of Slobodka decided to move from Slobodka to move to Eretz Yisrael. And where did they set up shop? The name of the yeshiva, by the way, is the Knesset Yechezkel Yeshiva. Where did they set up shop? In Hebron, 1924. There was a rabbi named Rabbi Moshe Mordechai Epstein. Rabbi Moshe Mordechai Epstein's daughter was married to Rabbi Cheskel Sarna, and his other daughter was married to Rabbi Moshe Finkel. Rabbi Moshe Finkel was the son of the Alter of Slobodka. So these two people, Rabbi Cheskel Sarna and Rabbi Moshe Finkel, these are the Rosh Yeshiva Shivat Knesset Yechezkel. So indeed, In 1893, when Rabbi Nosson Tzvi Finkel invited Rabbi Epstein to become Rosh Yeshiva of the famed yeshiva establishment in Slobodka, there he was. So Moshe Mordechai Epstein and Yechezkel Sarna were the heads of the yeshiva in 1924 in Hebron. And in 1928, after Rosh Hashanah and Kippur and Sukkot, this boy, Avram David Scheinberg, came to study in the yeshiva. There they were learning. It's letter after letter and letter. The yeshiva itself is a revelation to me. The boys surely fell far short of the popular conception of what is a yeshiva bacher. They, for the most part, are neatly and modernly dressed, although a bit shabby, of course. In manners and deportment, they are perfect. Yeshiva is insistent upon a high standard of etiquette within the yeshiva and outside as well. The character of each of the 200 students is the highest imaginable. Even I was surprised at what I had found. The student body is composed of the purest type of idealists. They are both married and single men, ranging in ages from 20 to 60. Already ordained rabbis sit and learn all day that support themselves from teaching the younger students. On the 20th of November, 1928, my dearest mother, Admei Avesrim Shana, he wrote, "You asked me in your letter to tell you something about Hebron. Well, I should do my best, but bear in mind that my piecemeal description will fall far short of doing Hebron justice. As I wrote previously, the city of Hebron is situated amongst the mountains of Yehuda, famous in biblical history and dear and sacred to Jewish hearts. Driving by automobile from Jerusalem, that is the only means of transportation besides donkeys, you are thrilled at the beauty of graceful hills and mountain valleys. Everything is a golden brown and a very deep green. Even though the sun is quite strong, as only the Oriental sun is, you are forced to remove your sunglasses by the sheer natural scenic beauty. I tell you, in your wildest flights of imagination, you could not picture Palestine. And to crown your sensations, you are ever aware that you are treading on holy ground, that you are breathing holy air. This, you say, over and over again to yourself, is the land given as a divine gift to our ancestors. This is the land from which religion and civilization spread to the rest of the world. The light of spirituality of Zion. This is the land of prophecy, the land of the divine presence. The Shekhinah rested in the Holy of Holies in our sacred temple. These sentiments and more are ever in your mind and heart here in Palestine. You would think quite the contrary, and especially are you in a state of constant inspiration here in Hebron. Just think, within 10 minutes walk is Marna Machpelah, with the Arba Zugos, the 4 couples buried, Adam and Eve, Avram and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, Yaakov and Leah, in the schus of the patriarchs who live under divine light of protection. History has it that such as the Ramban, the Baal Reshis Chachma, and others also laid to rest here in Hebron, since Jewish tradition tells us that the resurrection will begin here. Therefore, Avram named the place Hebron, meaning the joining, the uniting of the body and the soul. Goes on to describe story after story. He's writing to them in June of 1929, how exciting it was that the daughter of the Rosh Yeshiva, Moshe Mordechai Epstein, was married in Hebron. It's difficult to describe it coherently. Let me jot down some points of interest. Every notable of Hebron, both Arab and Jewish, attended the affair. The English governor, the chief of police, the police commissioner of the Hebron district, many Arab sheikhs arrayed in their turbans, glistening silk robes. Then the entire Jewish community, of course, turned out. The Sephardic Jews with every one of their chachams. First in order was the groom procession from the groom's residence to the bride for the bedekin. And the procession to the chuppah, it was situated in the open air in the courtyard of the yeshiva. The whole city with the advance and vanguard of dancers and music proceeded to the bride's home. We snapped quite a few pictures of the parade and the crowd in general. I hope they come out well. There are hundreds of guests to come to stay here in honor of our rabbi. Among these are Tzvi Pesach Frank. It's the great-grandfather of our own Steve Landis, the Rav Rosh of Yerushalayim, and his wife, Mrs. Stanford's parents. There are numerous Americans here, the Harbiter family. They motored down from Jerusalem in their Cadillac, bringing quite a few guests along. An American newspaper correspondent, practically all tourists, came down to witness this extraordinary affair. Dr. Goldstein, who's a West End Avenue physician from New York, took some 100 feet of movies of the procession and ceremony. He promised to send me a duplicate film of the pictures, which he will entitle A Royal Wedding. I can have it projected. The modern character, and in general, the genuine Jewish atmosphere of Simcha Shal Mitzvah. Our American family was increased by one this past week, a graduate rabbi of Chicago, Rabbi David Winchester, the rabbi of Springfield, Illinois, who has come to learn with us. What a fine fellow. He goes on to describe the last letter was dated 14/5/689, August 20, 1929. Dear Dad, I'm a Tisha B'Av at Yerushalayim. What an inspiration, what a poignant sense of sorrow and mourning. I accompanied several friends, all students of the Yeshiva to Yerushalayim for Tisha B'Av. As we walked along Yerushalayim streets, we could almost imagine the streams of Jewish blood flowing at our feet. The horrible scenes of slaughter, the Jewish sages, budding youth, tender babes in their mother's arms, all killed by the barbaric sword of the enemy. A visit to the Wailing Wall brought our national tragedy home to us in the strongest sense. Our sacred temple destroyed, the actual, literal dwelling place of the Almighty, the fount from which divine light emanated to the entire world. Our sages expressed themselves as follows: had the Romans but known what great benefits and blessings she enjoyed from the Sukkot offerings, she would never have destroyed the temple. This year had a special import for Tisha B'Av, 1929. No doubt you have all been following the news of the Wailing Wall. The Arabs are employing all their inherent slyness and cunning to confiscate this holiest of Jewish relics of a glorious Jewish past. Jerusalem has been in a state of constant excitement and tension for 10 months. And Tisha B'Av, this tension reached almost the breaking point. The wailing at the wall was heard rending to hear. Even the so-called irreligious among us prayed with a fervor at the Chatzar HaKotel. Goes on to describe and describe and describe. What's new in Memphis, Dad? I still await the long-promised photographs and snapshots. How's mother's health and your own? I pray good. My ever-present love and kisses. Devotedly, Dave. On the 18th of Av, the 23rd of August, 1929, 90 years ago, just a week from now, in a large-scale organized pogrom. The assault was well planned, and its aim was well defined: the elimination of the Jewish settlement of Hebron. The rioters did not spare women, children, or the aged. The British gave passive assent. 67 were killed, 60 wounded. The community was destroyed, synagogues razed, and Torah scrolls burned. 59 of the 67 victims were buried in a common grave in the Jewish cemetery, including 23 who had been murdered in one house alone and then dismembered. The surviving Jews fled to Yerushalayim. During the violence, Hajj Issa el-Khurdiya, a local Arab who lived in a house in the Jewish quarter, sheltered 33 Jews in his basement and protected them from the rioting mob. The 18th of Av is not just this massacre, but among the people massacred is indeed Aaron David Scheinberg, Hashem Yikom Damo, who was murdered there among the students of the Yeshivat Knesset Yisrael. That was then moved afterward to Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, where it's now called Yeshivas Hebron. We recite together now, and we're reciting this Kinot. I just want to tell you one last thing about it. I won't read you now. I have a lot of the newspaper reports from 1928 of what was going on. I mentioned all this started because of the controversy at the Kotel. Well, you know what the controversy at the Kotel was? It was a little tiny little street. On Yom Kippur, an Admor came from Poland, Reb Menachem Mendel Guterman, and he asked them to put up a mechitza. There was no mechitza at the Kotel before that. Not because they didn't believe in mechitza, because who was coming to the Kotel? It was a backwater. A few Jews here, a few Jews there. The men stood in the front, the women behind. There was no one. This rabbi came and said, let's put up a mechitza. There's a journalist who was there, Wolfgang von Wiesel, said that he saw what happened. He said that there was a Sephardi Jew who was there, the Shamish, at the Kotel to him. And so he said to his Arab friends, if I was still the Shamish of the whole place over here, there wouldn't be a new wall that was just built here at the Kotel. The Arabs reported this to the Mufti of Yerushalayim, and he told the British. And that was the beginning of the controversy. Jew versus Jew soon became the Arabs versus the Jews. And it culminated in that terrible and horrific destruction of Hebron, Kever Avot. We recite now Az Bahaloch, page 278. Az Bahaloch Yemiyal Kever Avot, Amatsimot Chavivot Matim Shavot, Benechem Galur Batechem Chavivot, Beischut Avot Eretz Ta'alivot, Gal Kulam Kimin Al Chesed Banu, Lo Yukol Tachanim Yeshochem. Onim Aye Haftachat, Schadli and Bisham, New Quoted the Toad, Will Facher the Bureau, the Alan Aina and the Handle Shaviano, Reich et Apak Manuet Lolo, Zag of Hamon Bavuran, Chin Play Elon, China Museti, Essa the King of Buran, Aye Haftachat, Atira Avram, Taul Hoyot, Bavodot Zorot, Yatsulach Borot Mishborot. Veget op hak, Vito Aser de Bibrot, Kol Savach, Shok Shachar, Shal Tavach Uchak, Veheim Zar Mishchak Mchak, Ayav Tavach, Riva Binti Akim Gitzra, Mar Birindia, Tim Har Maria, Nur 18 so the Aya, Olim, Messiah, Messiah, the Eich et Apach, we get Zachari, Sach, Yulad, the Telef, Naot, the Ketani, Shalei, Zalef, Ola Lai, Asher Tipachti, Elef, Eich Gozu, Many Bechele, Eich Hufra, Many Dami Bedami, Kama Elef, Patz, Ro, Enem, Kavfush, the Efer, Uduma, Son, Asher Cheki, Uamai, Eich Gozu, the Rozman, the Ayav Tacha, Kibo Alma, Kobichi Leia, מתופפת על רובע, רוחל אחותה, נבקה על פניה, וזיל פמקה פניה, ביל הפיקונני בשתי ידיה. שובו תנימים נוחתכם, מלא כל מי שאלו אתכם, שולחתי בבל למענכם, ואני משובב גלות פניכם. We're going to skip the Kina of H2 You're welcome to say it after we finish the davening. You could say Kina at any time during the day today, and that's a good synopsis Kina to say afterward. If you would turn with me, please, now to Tzil and Ali Tishali, page 328. This is written, of course, by Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, and we should remind ourselves, Tzion Alot Tishli Shloma Sirayich, that it was only just earlier this year that the remains of Zechariah Bamel, Hashem Yikom Damo, returned and interred in Eretz Yisrael and Eretz HaKodesh on Har Herzl. And what that means for Klal Yisrael, that all these years since he disappeared in 1982, a student from Shivat Har Etzion, together with his friends, Tzvi Feldman, Yehuda Katz, and he's the only one so far who's been returned. His remains have been returned. And we think also a little bit today, while we're thinking about prisoners of Zion, Leah Golden, the mother of Hadar Golden, whose remains are being held captive in the Gaza Strip, published a video in May of this year where she said, I am a captive. Because to be a captive of Zion is not just to be physically outside of Eretz Yisrael. It turns out you can even be inside Eretz Yisrael and still be feeling like you're a captive Nebuch to terrible, terrible things. And we're waiting for the body of Hadar Golden to be returned to Eretz Yisrael. The group is also soon to be holding Israeli civilians, Avera Mengitzu and Hisham al-Sayed, who each went into Gaza of their own accord, are both believed to have been mentally ill, and who may or may not even be alive at this time. The remains of soldiers Hadar Golden and Oron Shaul have never been returned since 2014, and we're still waiting for them to come back. Tzion Alot Tishali, Shloma Sirayich, page 328. Antamin ve'et echlor musivas v'teichem chinosim ha'echid ve'et el me'od yamel machanaichem yei toraich samoschim moschim alach yotzreich patach limus alei shachar shalem v'ra'im ha'ribar ve'noreich et samson v'ra'ich ha'charav sh'yishtakoy v'kumshua v'kumshua v'ra'ich עד בית מלוכד, עד כיסא כבודד, איך ישבו עבדים, עד איך כיסא כבודד, ומשתק מקום שמילואים מחוזייך יציאייך, ויעשה לי כנפיים, וארכיק נגוד, אני בביטרי, ובובי בתורייך, אפול אפי, עלי עצרי ארצייך, וארץ אבנייך, למאוד אחבך נבייך, את אפרייך. כי עומדי עלי כבוד, אבותיי בשתמי, עלי חברון, מבחר כבורייך, הר העבדים, בהור ההר, אז ששם שני אורים גדולים, אורייך מורייך, חי נשום אבי עצייך, ממער דרוהר, אב כרפורייך, ונופת סוף מורייך, נעם נפשי הלוך, ארום יחף, עלי חרבות שממה, אשר כבורייך, ולכל עלמייך, השם יגנז, ומקום כרובייך, ששכנו חברייך, אגוז ואסליך, ואלעזר, וקופסמן, חילר, ארץ בבל צייך, חילוב ויעקב. בשעתו בארץ, לפי עורבי, ובשרייך, אזכר ההלה, אשתה החמרייך, ואזכר ההליבה, ואמצע עת שמרייך, ציון יופי אהבה, וחן, אורי לנעוד, ובאופן שהוא נפשך חייכם, הסמך לשבתך, להקראת מה שלמותך, רוב משמעייך, ושבי שרף נגייך, ושתח לאיש ממקומו, על נוח שרייך, עדרי המוני, בסרגל נתפדרו, על גבעת ראשך, חוג ידי רייך, מחזין גבשועייך, ומתאמצים לעבור. Listen, Sonne, Marayich, Sin of Fabsos, good love in Hevlon, Damu, to my Reich, let me Damu, Messichai, Amin, the Aich, Amin, the Aich, the Sky, Sin of Yachov, Khalil, Command Khalil, Hosnet, Olam, Dovedon is your Aich, Moscow Haich, Ashanos, Yikra, Riskon, the Hatzirahich. Ashim Hakiriki, Yirelo, Baku Allah, Sharaich. Because to fight the Hiraich, Lalo, the Simchate, the Suveich, Elei, Hadu, good. Continuing on page 360 with Shali Sufa Va'esh. There's much to say about this. There's not enough time to say it. I looked up from the National Library of Israel the report from January 6, 1941 that appeared in Hatzofeh, one of the Israeli papers, that described the burning of the Sfarim from Yeshivat Chachmei Lublin. It describes a translation from a German paper, a Nazi paper, that described the scene. It essentially describes the pride, the great pride that was felt by the people of Lublin, the Nazis, Imam Shimon, who burned the books from the yeshiva. There were many tens of thousands of svarim that were burned there. They were collected there from many of the yeshivas in Poland, and it describes that there was such a great conflagration. The Jewish people were crying so loud that they called in a marching band in order to drown out their cries as they were crying there. And I can't help but remind us all of the reality that Mori Virabi, with Pinchas Hirschberg, the chief rabbi of Montreal, passed away in the mid-90s, 1997, who I knew personally was a Talmud of Yeshivat Chachmei Lublin, and one of the few survivors from that yeshiva, from that venerable yeshiva. And we was able to go there, was able to give a shiur there on our mission. Also today, speaking of the burning of books, this is the 25th anniversary, July 18th, 2019 was the 25th anniversary of the bombing of the Jewish Community Center, the AMIA building in Argentina, Buenos Aires. 85 people were murdered, 300 were injured. A massive cache of documents that had been rescued from the Shoah was nearly completely destroyed, if not for the volunteers who went in after the destruction to try to offload by hand the books one at a time to try to save them, all the svarim from there. And just to think about what that means. And the collection still exists to this day. You remember today the Jewish prosecutor Alberto Nisman, who was found dead in 2015. And at the beginning, the government said it was a suicide. It was strange that a man should commit suicide as a prosecutor on the night before he was going to go to court to implicate the Prime Minister of Argentina for her role in the cover-up of the bombing and Iran's involvement in causing that bombing to transpire. We don't have time already to read the whole Kinot Shali Sufa Ba'esh, which was really about the burning of the Talmud originally in 1242 in the Market Square in Paris. And according to some accounts, it was actually burned, some say, in the courtyard of the Notre Dame Cathedral. Others disagree. There's a discussion about that, yes or no. And we mourn over the burning of Jewish books throughout Jewish history. And we have a Kinot, therefore, about it as well. We're going to turn now to the Kinot al Shoah. We've talked a lot today about the Shoah. I'll tell you just one story to lead us into that recitation. Rafal Levsky describes that there were people in Auschwitz who said Kaddish for themselves. In Buna Monovitz, one of the satellite camps of Auschwitz, also known as Auschwitz III, there was a Jew by the name of Mendel Hager who came from a Hungarian family of rabbis. It was perfectly clear to him that he should say Kaddish every day for himself. He would insist that whenever we went out to work, we were going to our own funerals. His Kaddish shocked our broken hearts. Even Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchever had never recited such a heart-rending Kaddish. One day he could no longer hold the hoe in his hand, but still he managed to say Kaddish for himself. We carried his corpse back with us to the camp, and I whispered Yizgadash to myself the whole way. Rafal Levsky adds, there were millions of such Mendels. Please rise, we said to the Kinot al Shoah. It's the separate sheet. We'll recite it together, and then we'll recite Litzion.
Eli, Eli, nafshi bechi, zaki bad Yisrael,
מספצי והתייפחי, אך לא האש בישראל, על טבח עם אשר הוכן, ייסורי שכול אשדוד דמים, זקן וטף לא רוחם, על עקדה קורבן תמים, על עוללים מולי חלב, תמרו תשים לפי צורים, ועל דמם אשר זב, בראש חוצות לאין הורים, על הקהילות השוממות, על חורבן מקדשי יקודי להב שלהבות, הרי פאר בישראל, עלי דורות אשר נתגאו, בימי אבות על דמי בנים, בגיא אושוויץ תמו גבהו, עלי מוקדות עקיף שנים, עלי חילואים חגורי שק, הנמקים ברבובותיהם, בטרבלינג כי ומידנק, ואין מלקט עצמותיהם, עלי קרונות צופי אדם, אשר רוקדו גופרית וסיד, צחי צמא בכלות נפשם, צעקו מים ואין מושיט, עלי גבילים המחוללים, בידי נצים מנצל, שופים קרועים ומגואלים, אין אשפתות ואין גואל, על צדיקים ענבי עולם, נדיבי עם הוגי תורה, בתארה מחנק עולם, נפלה כבדה המנורה, עלי קידוש השם בעם, ועל נקמתם טהורים, ותעצומות מסרו נפשם, לחמו נפלו הגיבורים, על שבר עם נישא קינה, כבולי יגון עטויי שואה, על הנצח תפיל שנאה, ולא תפרוץ הנגוהה, ראה אלוהים אורי צפד, נפל ליבי שונאי קמים, הקשיבה שבי חישה מפלט, הצילה נפשי מאנשי דמים, אלי אלי נפשי בכי, זעקי בת ישראל, מספצי והתייפחי, אך לא האש בישראל. We don't have time, you can recite later if you like, the special Kinot I gave for you on the sheet on the back side of the sheet, which is actually about Galician, specifically about Galicia, which we visited, those of us in the mission, that's where we went. So we'll have to recite it another year or later in the day today. Let's turn together to say Elit Zion together. בתוך מקדש חדריה, עלי גלות משרתיאל, מנעימי שיר זמריה, ועל דמם אשר שופח, בו מימי יאוריה, עלי הגיון מחוליה, אשר דמם בעריה, ועל ועד אשר שמים, וביטול סנהדריה, עלי זבחי תמידיה, ופדיוני בכוריה, ועל חילול כלי היכל, ומזבח קטוריה, עלי טפי מלאכיה, בני דוד גביריה, על יופיים אשר חשך, עת צרוך את עריה, עלי כבוד אשר גלה, עת קורבן דביריה, ועל לוחץ אשר לחץ, ושם שקים חגוריה, עלי מחץ ורוב מכות, אשר הוכו נזיריה, ועל ניפוץ עלי סלע, ועריה ומעריה, עלי שמחת אויביה, צחקו על שבריה, ועל עינוי בני חורים, בדביה טהוריה, עלי פשע אשר יפתח, שאו דרך אשוריה, ועל צבאות קהליה, שזופיה שחוריה, עלי קולות מחרפיה, ועת רבו פגריה, על רגשת נגדיה, בתוך משכן חצריה, עלי שמך אשר הוהל, לפי המים הציליה, ועל תחת יצא וחולך, ושום ושמריה, כמו אישה בציריה, וחיתו לך עבור הצק, על בעל נעוריה. Page 398. Page 398. zeker ook goed voor de buurt zich kort van in van maar nooit van de kosten te doen ook hoor dus ik kom zelf gaan ze daar hier ik net dan door het ook dan moet soms gewoon goed hoor niemand zo goed als met een nee gewoon la ga je saber wat dan تو تعرف كده خمس بيها خيرت سنتيكا نحن خلصنا ورغم من الخلق راب وقاشي كلنا بتسمى السيرش شمع دناي كل هذا كاش مش بي أصلا باش خشب كدوش ما يتصور فلارت ودون كم شو منو بتشين تكسوار وورد كبار من كمال هتروح وشيء بتشاهد زي ساعة مش عارف إحنا لو شيء قلنا له خبر كان يوم ما يوم ما يلو يضم سكوت شمس اليوم من تصحى المرة كان راح يكون خبر أبي يا أكيد أنا ترسل فسبوك يا فسبوك مش بعرف Mam egoik, normaal gemaakt שיבות, כל כך כלי, עוד מהלכות, כל הפילים מהארץ, היו להם כל אחד בכלל בוגר שיבת ראשות, נאמר, היה גם לא בארץ, כמו ריד משמע. I need one more minute, and you'll think, we're just sitting here for 4 hours. There's more? There's one more thing we have to do. No one has written a Kinot on terror. But every year I mention that there should be a Kinot one day. There should be a Kinot for the terrorism that's befallen Klal Yisrael. And this is the first time, and hopefully the last time, that we have to talk about terror victims in the United States of America. There's no Kinot yet for them. But the Kedoshei Pittsburgh and the Kedosha, all of those who have been killed at Kiddush Hashem throughout Jewish history. Today we remember Joyce Feinberg, Jared Rabinowitz, David Rosenthal, Cecil Rosenthal, Irvin Younger, Dan Stein, Rose Mallon, Richard Gottfried, Bernice Simon, Sylvan Simon, Mel Wax, Lori Gilbert Kay. In Eretz Yisrael, since last Tisha B'Av, murdered by terrorists, Yotam Ovadia, Ari Fuld, Kim Levengrand Yechezkel, Ziv Hajbi, Mahmoud Abu Asba, Amiad Yisrael Ishran, Yuval Mor Yosef, Yosef Cohen, Ori Ansbacher, Gal Kedan, Rabbi Achiad Ettinger, Moshe Agadi, Ziad Al-Hamada, Moshe Fader, Pinchas Menachem Prezusman, Rivka Jamil, most recently, of course, Vir Sorek, Sheni Kondaman. There's not yet a Kinot written for these people. I told you about my Zeta before, and I told you my Zeta was from Kovel. I told you he came in 1926 to Montreal. Baruch Hashem, beautiful family, was saved. We also sat in the Mizrach front in this shul in Montreal. In Mizrach, Montreal it was a very beautiful, big shul. It was, I don't know, it was the orator of Montreal. Packed. It's the modern Orthodox community. Everyone was there. My Zeta sat in the Mizrach front. 4 rows up front. I was 5 years old when I left that shul. I have vivid memories. There was a guy who sat in the front there. His name was Charnas. Red mustache, red hair, fancy tallis. And he had his children were there. And he had his young son, Randy. And all his kids would come in and daven. They were from people. And Randy would lead Adon Olam and Yigdal. He knew how to do it. I never knew how to do it. They had a daughter. They have a daughter. Her name was Galila Charnas. I remember her. She went to the same school I did, much older than me. Galila Charnas. Galila Charnas moved to Eretz Yisrael. And Galila Charnas moved to Eretz Yisrael. And indeed, her son is Amichai. Galila Charnas got married to a man whose last name is Ishran. And Amichai Ishran and his wife, Shira, were driving in January when they were hit in a drive-by shooting. And you remember that the mother was very severely wounded, and the baby was born, and a little while after it was born, it died. On December 12th, posthumously, as is the custom of Klal Yisrael, they gave the baby a bris, and they gave the baby a name, and they named the baby Amiad Yisrael. Our nation is forever Yisrael. And that's how close to home the whole thing cuts. And this little baby boy was interred in the ground of Eretz Yisrael. A dual Israeli-Canadian citizen was killed. That's how close everything is over here. People wrote poetry and Kinot already on him. About it. Kinot to Eliyahu Navi. Shalom Alecha Eliyahu Navi. Ratzita shetega shekvar ein tzorech. Dama prid shafuch. V'aye hanimor. Peace be upon you, Eliyahu Navi. I wanted you to know there's already no point in having the blood of the covenant because it's already been spilled. But where is the one who is circumcised? It ends with Eight Shari Ratzni Patach Oked V'Aneka V'Hamizbeach. It's time to open the gate of Ratzon, of will and desire from Hashem. You should open it already. The one who is bound and the one who binds, and the Mizbeach as well. This is our last Tisha B'Av. And as we're closing now the book of Kinot, and those of us who will recite more Kinot this afternoon for ourselves, should have in mind the continuity of the enormity of what's transpired and the enormity of the great responsibility each of us has as a standard bearer of memory, carrying them all the way until today. And I'd be at God said it. Amen. Mincha 135.